Hi, my name is James. I'm one of the developers of PhileCMS, and today I'm going to explain to you what file is and why a file is cool. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what is file, how does it work, why is it cool? So the coolest thing about it is that it's a flat file CMS. Pretty hip nowadays to have these flat file CMSs, but what the heck does that mean? It means that the CMS is just files. There's no database, there's no SQL, there's no nothing like that. It's a bunch of files, and the files actually run the site. As you can see, that's what it says right here. It's file-based CMS, and it uses Markdown by default. We'll get to that later, but it uses Markdown to render the actual pages. So you write your pages in Markdown, save them in a contents folder, and then when you actually visit your site, they render. They translate an index file or any kind of Markdown file into a URL. So you have, anytime you see index.md in a folder, that's going to translate to, the blank. It's going to get rewritten to whatever the folder above it's called. So you can see that sub.md is actually the same as sub. But if you put index.md in a subfolder, that's actually the same thing. So you can have a folder, and then maybe you want to add more pages, so you make a subfolder, rename sub to index, move it in here, and then add more pages. So in this case, like this. So you get this kind of structure. And then for something really long, you get obviously a long URL. There's also a 404 MD file, which will basically throw an error. Whenever you have like something not found, it'll just reroute to 404. So one of the sweet things is that we do stuff kind of different than what the project was based off of, which is Pico, which you may have seen. There's issues on Pico that relate to file or talk about file, because me and Frank, the other developer, started file after we found that Pico was just kind of stagnant in terms of development and improvement. So we decided to start file, and it's doing pretty well. And I use it with my company, and we have a bunch of sites on it now. So I want to show you some of the differences between file and Pico. So why use this over Pico? Well, it's object oriented. It's a bunch of classes, bunch of models, pages, and all this stuff, which is fun. But the other great thing is the event system is much more verbose than Pico's, and it's triggered. It's triggered. It doesn't just fall through. It doesn't just waterfall through events. You can trigger certain events. One of the awesome things is overloading, not just the parser, but template engine as well. So let's say you don't like Markdown. Well, there's a plugin for text style. There's a plugin for latex as well, I think. Oh wait, we haven't released that yet. But you can change stuff. You can change things based on who the site's for. So maybe you like Markdown, but you find PHP Markdown slow. Well, there's one for Parsedown, which is a new Markdown parser, which is quite a bit faster. It also has some other nice little defaults. You can see here that I'm disabling the Markdown one and using Parsedown instead, but we'll get to that in a minute. So those are some of the cool things that File can do. The other thing is performance. So you can see that off the bat, like File with 3 pages, the default, it's pretty much better than the speed of Pico. Once you add more pages, 20 pages, you can see that, well, there's quite a huge difference. You can see that the difference in File is minimal. In fact, it's it's faster with 20 pages than it was with 3 pages here, which is kind of crazy. But we're just showing that File can handle a lot of pages. You can also see here some of the cache grind data. So we really wanted to take something that, Pico's really great. One of the reasons I started using it was because it was really awesome. But then as I started to get more and more advanced, I found that it was like, oh, this is slow. This is why is it like this? Stuff like that. So one of the first things we did was, when we forked Pico, was improve a lot of the things and merge in a lot of the features that people were asking for. Things like being able to write comments even though they weren't just the meta. So what is the meta? Meta is basically the top of the Markdown file has this information here that tells you about the page. So in this case, the setup MD file has a title called of setup. And that's really it. That's what the title is. It's set in the top of the Markdown file, and it explains what the page is about, title. And it gets rendered onto the template. The thing we wanted was that in Pico, which I think it still does it, it actually parses the whole file for this meta, just for this block. But one of the things we did with file was instead of parsing the whole file, we just parsed the first block instead of parsing all of these blocks. One of the other things too is you can use HTML style comments for your meta blocks. So why is that good? Is because if you're using a markdown to rendered file, editor, then this won't get rendered in there. Whereas if you use this style, it will, because this doesn't get parsed properly by HTML. It gets parsed as text. So you get a big block of text at the top of your file when really you don't need to see this. Like, you don't see it on the file. Why would you want to see it in your editor? So you don't see it in those conversion style editors. So just like Pico, file uses these themes. They're basically just dumped in the theme folder, and inside the theme folder is where everything kind of goes, and it kind of like controls a lot of what your site does. So you can see here in themes, here's the default theme, which is what the default theme it comes with. I haven't changed anything yet, but I'm going to change some stuff later so you can see how it works. And inside of the theme, we use a template engine called Twig. And what Twig does is it allows you to write PHP rather easily, and it has some nice little helpers. So if you've ever used Lex or Smarty, those are both actual parsers that you can switch out. So here's a the Smarty one here. So you can use Smarty style templates instead of using Twig. That's more of a personal preference thing, or the elitists who complain about different parsers. But anyway, that's one of the great things. If you don't like it the way it is, you can swap out the core without actually editing the core. So you can keep the file up to date by just using git to pull the latest version without actually breaking your site, because everything's sort of compartmentalized. So you don't have to break your site when you update it. Your plugin sort of controls the parser, but we could go ahead and change the way that the parser works, but your site actually won't break because you might be using a separate parser, or maybe you're just using Twig anyway. So there's always that. It's pretty awesome to keep your site up to date without hacking the core together. So you can see that here's some Twig code. As you can see, it's the exact same as Pico, really. There's no difference in terms of the way that pages work, the way that the whole system works. Just the underlying core is quite different. Same with the plugins. Just like Pico, file has a config, which lets you set up the way that the site works, and all the defaults and all the settings that you want. And it has all the events, which are kind of advanced, but we can talk about that in a bit. So what does it look like when you first install it? So when you first install it, you get a blank config file, which you'll see on your setup page. It's telling you to fill in this config encrypt key. So what that is that recently there was encryption utilities added, which can allow you to do things like encrypt little files and stuff. There's a little plugin that will allow you to save data to a file, so you could use it to encrypt that and decrypt that and blah, blah, blah. So the first thing we do is click on that generator link, which goes to the generator PHP file, which gives us a random bunch of code. Paste it in here, save it, refresh, and you'll say, 4.4. That's because once it realizes that you've set your encryption key, it goes ahead and deletes all the setup stuff so that you don't have it just sitting there doing nothing. You can see there was a setup page here, but now it's gone. And you can see it's throwing an error because there is no setup page anymore because it was deleted. So let's go to the home page. And there it is. There's your home page. It's got all your content in it. This is the index.md file, the first one in the content folder. So if we open up content index, open that up, there it is right there. There's all the information inside of it. You can see that there's the meta with HTML, title, welcome, description. This page is the description. And if we look at our code here, we can see there's the description right there. There's some other stuff. There's the title. There's our little subpipe thing. You can see there's some style sheets being linked up to the default theme because that's our default theme. You can see some JavaScript at the bottom for highlighting the code. And if we actually open the default config, which is the base of the site, you can actually see some of the stuff in here. So here, there's a theme. It's default. The page is being ordered by title, descending. Here's the time zone, which is actually just right there, configured in there. And you can see some plugins that are configured by default. So you can actually see that the actual core is a bunch of plugins. The Markdown plugin is the default parser. The template Twig plugin is the default the default template parser. You can see the fast cache is true. The data persistence is true. This is for the saving the files. you can see there's a demo plugin there that's true, that doesn't do anything. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to copy this, paste it in our config, because I always recommend turning some of these off. We don't need this one on. Parser markdown and parser template, definitely need those or else our site wouldn't run. The fast cache, I want to turn this off because I'm in development, so I don't want it to cache my pages. I'm trying to like test my site and stuff. You know, you change the navigation, it's not changing, you're like, what the hell is going on? It's probably because you have the cache turned on. So we'll turn this to false as well. So save that. We'll go and check our site, and holy hell, it still works. So that's good. So let's check out our index file. So we talked a little bit about templates and template parsers and the meta inside of a page. So you can actually set a template in your meta. If the template isn't set, it will fall back to index. So if I call this page, there is no page template. If we open up our themes folder, there is no page file. Page.m.html doesn't exist in here. But since we know that if there's nothing, we should use index. If I refresh this page, it doesn't show an error, it just uses the index file instead. But if I create a new page called page.html, this is a new template. So all the files in the root of the theme folder are templates. So we can do page.html, save that in there, and inside of here we're going to add a nice big h1 that says page template. Save it, give her a refresh, bam, there it is, page template. So we know the difference between a page.html template and a index.html template because this just shoves content in here. This is just straight up HTML. But on this page I have a little bit of stuff before this, which you can see right here for page. Index.html doesn't have this line. It's set here, that's why it's using this page. So that's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to just remove that, refresh, and it's back to normal. It's back to using the index.html template. So one of the other great things is that it's all markdown, uses tables, uses all this stuff by default. But what about like actually changing your site, like using the attributes of your page? Well, unlike Pico, File has a custom meta by default. So if I look at the top of this page, you can see there's a title and description. And you obviously saw the template, but what if I want to add in a new one like author and put James in here, save it? It's not going to show up on my template because I haven't set up anything to read that yet. So if I go on my themes, default, index, you'll see there's nothing in here relating to author. But I can go ahead and add it in here. And I can do article by, and here's our nice twig, current page, or you can use meta, they're both kind of the same, meta.author. We'll go ahead and refresh. Bam, there it is, article by James. This only exists in this page, and you'll see if I go to another page, it won't show. See? That doesn't show. It's because these pages don't have an author set, just this one does. So you can see it's there. So how can we get around that? Well, we can use an if, we can use an if statement. I'm going to turn twig highlighting on so you can see how twig kind of works. That's a lot easier to tell. I'm using Sublime Text, so I just downloaded the twig syntax language. So we're going to say if meta.author. If it doesn't exist, it's null. So that's easy. Cut this out, add it here, and we're going to see, yep, we're still good. We're checking to see if there's an author set. If there is one, chuck some code in there. Check on this page. Oh, no author, no code, no paragraph. So that's kind of how meta works. It's you can use that here as well. So you can do something like, So a lot of the things that people want to do is like, how do I do like current page? Like, how do I have like an active class on my navigation? So that's something else you can do. So we do if, and then we're going to do current page dot title. This is one of the things that I kind of do. This little trick that I use. Since we're in a for each loop, this is how Twig does for each. So we're going to say for each page in pages. So we get a loop of page, which is each page in the entire site. We're going to do if current page dot title equals page dot title. So we're saying if the current page is equal to the page in this loop, well, go ahead and add a class of active. Save that. Give that a refresh. Now you can't see it because I don't have any CSS set up here, but if I inspect this element, you can see that there is an active class on there, and the other ones don't have it. The class isn't there because that's not the page we're on. If we go to this other subpage, you can see that there is an active class. That's just a little trick that I use to make sure that we're on the right page. It's always going to be this. It should always be the same unless you're doing something weird in a plugin that modifies the title of the page. This should still work. So save that. We're going to see that the active class is now gone since we don't have any styling. There's no point in using it. So we'll go back to the home page. So something else I want to show you is how the config works. So you can kind of see up here that I have a bunch of metadata and open graph tags and stuff like that. But you can actually call this config file. So sometimes I'll use this as like a global settings. So maybe we want something like site icon. How about that? Site icon equals, and then let's just put a file here. So icon.png. There it is. So we do have an icon.png file. It's right in the root here. So maybe instead we're just going to chuck it in the, let's chuck it in the content folder. Let's make a new folder called images, and we're going to put a icon.png in there. So we can see here that we have just a straight up icon.png, a reference to an image. So something that I like to do for my clients and for my own stuff is that I make this file as easy to fill out as possible. If you ask the client to fill out like content/images/icon, like they might just screw it up, right? Maybe they put a trailing slash, maybe they don't, maybe they put, this is a capital C, or, spell content wrong, like who knows what they're gonna do. So I just make it that. And then in the theme right here, let's just do, I know there's an OG image, so let's do config.site icon. So you'll see here, when I refresh and check the code, you'll see that there's a new one, icon.png. The thing is, icon.png isn't the one we're looking for. We're looking for content/images/whatever. So we can actually do base URL, slow typing, /content/images/config.site icon. So now we're going to get a full URL to where that icon exists. So you can double click it, copy it, paste it in here, and bam, there it is. So now it's a full URL, even though I only set one little value. It's a kind of a cheap way. At least I think it's like a more error proof. If I tell someone like I have given this stuff to clients before who have never written PHP or never used PHP, but they can understand, like, replace this word with the word of the, or the name of the image, and they figure it out. So something I'd put in here is file name for the site's image, or something like that. And then they'd know that the file name for the site image. So it's pretty easy to fill that out for them. And it's an easy way to add custom stuff to your site without actually having to write plugins and stuff like that. You could even put a function in here, maybe like config. Let's just do date equals date, and then we'll do today's date. So that would be, let's do year. So we'll just put the year. Year, date Y, and we'll go in here somewhere. Let's just do a crazy custom meta and call it config.year. Save that, refresh. We can see there's a new year, and that's where the year is. So you can even put functions in here. I've done things like grabbed a gravatar URL. I thought it was a bit much to just put a plugin just to put one gravatar URL, so I wrote a little function that grabs the gravatar URL based on an email and then just chucks it in here. So that's pretty easy. One of the other things we can do is we can obviously change the theme. So if you look in the default config, you'll see that there's a theme here, which is the default theme. But if we had another theme in here, like another name or another folder, we could change that to something else. So you can actually see on the file repository, we have this blog theme that I set up. Wherever it is, here it is. So you can see that it's called blog. and you actually change your config to say blog. Use the theme blog. Change the dates. Make sure it's ordered by date instead of ordered by title or something like that. One of the sweet things about ordering, which Pico doesn't have either, is you can order pages with the custom meta. So instead of pages order by, I can do meta.order, or sorry, :order. And then, change the direction of where they're, how they're sorting. It's not going to change now. I have to set them all up with orders, but you can do that if you want to. And I've done it before. It's an easy way to get people to, without having to write a crazy plugin that does a custom order, it's already done. You don't have to do any extra work. And that was one of the reasons like me and Frank really wanted File to do. We wanted to do a lot of the work for you without having to be all complicated with databases and all that fun stuff. So you can see my pages should swap because I have ascending instead of descending. There we go. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about is plugins. So you can see here we have a bunch of plugins. They're all false. It's because these plugins are off during production. So, how can we make this smaller? Well, let's define a new constant called production. And let's make its value false because we are not in production right now. We are in development. So now we can use this throughout the site, throughout the, file application. So because we defined this up here, now we can use it there. I don't have to go and change each one individually. Save that. I have the Twig config plugins config open. So if we look inside the plugins folder, you'll see file template twig, and you'll see that here's a config. So each plugin has a config and a plugin. So we open that, which is this. So one of the things we want to do is, do some shortcuts. I don't want to go into each plugin and try to, find everything that has to be off or on during production or development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new little trick here. So production. So I want this debug to be false if production is false. So production right now is false. So this debug is going to be false, which is the opposite of what we want. We want if production is false, we want this to be false. We don't need that. If production is true, we want this to be false. If production is false, we want this to be true. This is kind of the same for the cache. So we're going to copy this up to here. So if production is true, we want this to be cache-dir. If not, we want it to be false. So cache-dir is a constant that points to the file cache, which is being used by Twig, and uses the other template engines use it too. So we can save that. This is already set up here, and we can refresh. Whoops. Oh, forgot my question mark on both. There we go. So now we're false. Everything's false. Everything's off. No cache, no nothing. We're all good. So that's a little shortcut for me, at least. I haven't actually used it yet, but it was something I sort of thought about today before I made this video. Was, hey, it'd be nice if I could just have one, environment variable, and that's what we'll call this, an environment variable. So you could do that in your own site and put it throughout all your different plugins and stuff, and make sure that everything's off when it needs to be off, everything's on when it needs to be on. You could use an htaccess production value as well and read it into that. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it, but this is just an easy way. So I'm going to show you using a plugin. So this is my new favorite plugin that I made. It is the inline images plugin. So we have a bunch of plugins here. This actually isn't a plugin, and neither is the blog theme, but I do have a couple little default themes. This one I've been working on recently. It's a little grunt enabled theme, so it has watch and Sass and all this other stuff, so you could build file themes really easy. I use it for my clients and stuff like that. One of the cool ones I made recently is this inline image plugin. So we're going to copy that, go into plugins, clone it into here. Oop. Yep, there it is, file inline image. Check and see what's inside. Yep, lots of stuff inside. Then we're going to go into here and make sure that it is true. So in this case, file inline image is images. No, just image. Right. Inline image. Yes. Okay, so this is actually just true, and it's always going to be true, and it's never going to be false. So we'll just shove that down here. Save it. So it's on now. It's on. And then when we go into our site and refresh, nothing's going to happen because we haven't used it yet. But I will show you how. So this plugin is cool because it actually manipulates your markdown file. You don't want to config. So what you do is you actually set a place where all your images go. And what this plugin actually does is it will turn a line that translates into an image. So if I have a markdown file and I put a new line, the name of an image, and then another new line, it uses some regex to find if there's anything that matches this sort of search. So it looks for new line, word with a dot, whatever image extension, new line. So it looks for this. That's what it's looking for. It's kind of the same way that Markdown works. So we open this here, you can see that what it actually does is it wraps an image in a tag, a class, and then makes that string into an image linking to wherever you put your images dir. So we can make this a div, we can make this a block quote, we can make this whatever we want. We could change this class to center. So one of the things that I find really annoying is that it's not that easy to center images in Markdown without actually wrapping things in a class. So the easiest thing we can do here is use this plugin and it'll just boop, make it for us. So we already put the icon.png in the images folder, which is something that we did over when we did the meta OG image part. So right in here, I'm just going to write icon.png, save it, and if everything works correctly, an image should appear. Yes, sweet. So let's check this out. And there it is, P, content image, icon. So what we could do here is add a style to this class in our style sheet, and we can make it text align center or something like that. So that would be pretty sweet. And there we go. We can make all our images align center without actually writing any code. In fact, this is a million times easier than writing a markdown image. If I wanted to do the equivalent, I'd have to do this. Image alt, wrap this up, put that, and I would have to actually write out the base URL, or use a plugin like Content, the other plugin that I made, the Content Variables plugin, which kind of Pico has this by default. It has like this, you can put like base URL like this, but this one allows you to actually set up your own variables in your config. So you can see here I set up the base URL just by using the default utility base URL, and I can actually set the site title and stuff, so we could use it like this. We could set up that, or I mean we'd have to write it out full, which would be in this case the whole URL 8/file/content /images/ there. That's the whole thing. Save it, give it a refresh, and there. But the thing is, it's just an image and a P. Like there's no class, there's no anything. How am I supposed to know? I'd have to use like JavaScript or something, or like reparse the markdown after and figure out, or use some sort of PHP HTML DOM class, in which case I can just write icon.png and call it a day, which is a lot easier for not only me, but I mean clients find it super easy too. That's it. That's all you do is you write one word and a .png at the end. The only thing is it doesn't really check to see if it's a file or not, which is something I need to change, but because it's dynamic, so that's something that will give you an error. If I spell this wrong, like icon2 or icon s, we can refresh and it'll be busted. So it doesn't actually check if it's an image. You need to make sure that that's spelled right. But other than that, it works awesome. So, we can do that too. So some people have written their own plugins. I've translated a couple of Pico plugins here. You can see that there's the RSS plugin and an XML sitemap plugin. Frank recently made a Composer plugin installer, so you can actually install plugins via Composer. There's the user agent plugin. I use this one all the time. What it actually does is it can tell if you're on a desktop or a mobile, or it can tell like if you're on a Mac or a PC or stuff like that. So one of the things we can do here, let's install this plugin actually because it's pretty sweet. Let's do git clone this plugin, file user agent. I'm going to copy this because I'm lazy. Jump into our config. Let's close some of this stuff. There we go. So file user agent. One of the things I like to do is I put it on my HTML class, so you can actually see that you see all the stuff here. You can check and see if it's a desktop or a mobile, blah blah blah. What I like to do is go into my theme here, and I'll do class, this Node.js class, but I'll do user agent dot, let's do platform. Oh, let's actually copy this body class example. Save and give her a refresh. And you'll actually see in here, Mac desktop. So one of the cool things about that is maybe we can combine that with some of Twig's if statements. So if user agent dot, was it platform form equals Mac, this is a Mac. There we go, this is a Mac. If I should look at this on an iPhone or something, it won't come up with Mac. If I look at it on a desktop, or sorry, if I look at it on a PC or a Windows machine, it wouldn't load. We can also do user-agent.browser, I think, is the other key, so I can check to see if I'm on Chrome. We can test that one pretty easily. So we can do user-agent.browser, Google Chrome. So I'm just going to copy this. Browser. Check and see. Yes, this is Google Chrome, but if I put this into Firefox, we can see that we are not on Google Chrome. Nothing shows. So I use this for checking to see if on mobile, checking to see if on desktop, stuff like that. So I'll actually load different content if you're on a different device. I couple it with responsive design and development because I don't want to load a YouTube video in an iframe if you're on a phone. Instead, I'll load a button. I'll just say a button with the video URL. So I've actually done this before. So I'll do config, maybe like YouTube video, and then I'll use the code for the video. It's usually some like crazy list of characters, and I'll actually do an option in here to check if it's a desktop, and then I'll load the YouTube video in here in whatever the iframe syntax is, and then do an else for if it's not a desktop, and I would load just a button with the link to the video. So in this case, it's like config.youtube video, and this is like whatever it is, youtube.com slash, I don't know, I think it's like this, v equals something. Anyway, you can conditionally load content with this plugin, and I use it all the time. So some people hate on using like user agent sniffing for serving different content, but I'm not doing things like iOS 7, iOS 6.2. I'm actually just checking to see desktop or mobile. Is this Chrome? Because I add a class if it is. And so I can actually, I don't really use things like Modernizer anymore because I just check to see. If you're on Chrome, you can have this, this, and this. If you're on Firefox, I'll actually, Firefox doesn't really like SVG, so I might show a different SVG for Firefox. So you can do things like that. It's a lot easier than trying to like write conditional JavaScript or conditional CSS. Instead of just showing and hiding things, you can actually just don't show it. Like there's no point in loading a YouTube video on your iPhone. Just load a button instead. You click on it, it opens the YouTube app anyway, so no love lost there. Anyway, this is the file. This is sort of just a quick run through of what you can do. I'll make another video about the blog, and I'll also make another one about the grunt theming plugin because people seem to have a love affair with grunt. So I can show that one as well. Yeah, thanks for using file, and let me know what you think.